Simon, you and I have talked a bunch about the volatility profile of Bitcoin and the potential or chance for an operating company to not only have a large amount of Bitcoin on their balance sheet, but have debt and leverage similar to what MicroStrategy has done. And just maybe if you want to talk a little bit about what the doors that opens up for a corporate a corporate entity from the financing angle, and just again to reinforce the idea that volatility isn't something that's scary and should be avoided at all costs, and it actually is very advantageous. Just some thoughts there.
You're speaking to an equity derivatives trader, so volatility is my middle name. It's something that definitely embrace, and obviously if you understand option theory, the higher the volatility, the higher that option is worth. And so certainly together with volume, as Eric said, is something that's incredibly important. So volume plus volatility means that you're able now to have so many more tools in your tool shed. And so I think we would very much like in the the medium term to consider some kind of convert issuance. Japan is a very deep market. The convertible trading market is very active. And so theoretically, we may be able to see a situation where investors pay us to lend us money because they want that embedded call option. So I think MicroStrategy did 7 or 8 year converts with really high volatility that could have 50, 60, 70% option premium. And so the investor is basically getting that free call option and then willing to subsidize or take less on the interest. And so I'm feeling very excited about the potential for that. Other things which I think we can consider, and maybe an idea for your company, is when you do an equity issuance, if you throw in some warrants at the same time, the investor will value those warrants and see that as a discount. And so not only do you get to sell shares, but you have these options that could be exercised down the road. That is sort of a guarantee for more capital if Bitcoin goes to where it should.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah, and one other thing is just, it's interesting because a lot of people say, well, I can just buy the ETFs. Why do I need to buy your stock or my stock? And there's a lot of, there are a lot of fund managers, institutional fund managers, I know this from being one myself, that can't buy ETFs. They can only buy individual stocks. And so they're kind of, a lot of them are starving to have more exposure to Bitcoin. They can't do it through the ETF. So we're kind of their three options, and I think that the trading activity, the high volume, enables institutional funds to also participate more. So that has that added benefit.
Right. Yeah. Indeed. I was saying that the bond markets are even larger than the equity markets, and they're always looking for something to invest in.
Yeah.
I think MicroStrategy's previous convert was one of the top performing converts in the world. As interest rates rose, every other bond fell in value except yours.
Yeah, that is definitely the case. And in fact, at the beginning of this year, we had some of our convert investors call us up and say thank you. It was, our converts were some of the best performing, or the best performing asset in their portfolio, given what had occurred between 2022 and the end of 2023. But the idea of volatility certainly is something that benefits the construct of having a Bitcoin strategy. If I think about MicroStrategy, we talked about trading volume as one component. Prior to our Bitcoin strategy, I think MicroStrategy shares on a good day probably traded 100,000 shares a day. On a bad day, we're trading 1 million shares a day today, and on a good day, we're probably the most traded company, a listed company, period. And it's one of those things where I hear this a lot. Everyone has an opinion on Bitcoin, right? And in these financial markets, you either love Bitcoin and you want to be on the boat with us, or you hate Bitcoin and you want to be on the boat against us. Right. And all of those constituents come together and create this market that allows and gives sort of like the flywheel effect to like propel the ability for people to raise capital and improve that and enhance that. And so it's really one of those dynamics where volatility is scary, but volatility is vitality. And really, you're thinking about volatility, for me, translates to trying to find that uncorrelated return, right? And so if you think about MicroStrategy, I think we're trading at about 100 vol. If you look at the S&P 500 or the Nasdaq, that's probably 6 to 10 times the volatility of those indices. And you talked about the ETFs. MicroStrategy is probably trading at double the volatility of a Bitcoin ETF. So there's a lot of opportunities, whether you're betting for or against, and that creates that demand, and it creates a highly liquid ability for us to raise capital.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, the MicroStrategy converts, I believe, were a couple 100% above par, which just doesn't really happen in a bond market. So I think that's a really interesting thread to pull on, though, where if we zoom out a bit, we're in this macro situation where debt to GDP in all the G7 nations are